The ship's bell tolls once at dawn. It is not the sea's roar that wakes them, it is dread. Because the greatest fears of explorers are not the storms, nor the stars, nor the unknown miles. It is the shadows behind every wave and the silence they leave. Our ship is a Portuguese carrack, bound for the New World in 1521. We carry sails of heavy hemp, barrels of salted meat, crates of walnuts, and a cargo of hope, ambition, and an unspoken terror. Morning light glints on the quarterdeck. Captain Anselmo da Costa stands like a statue. He stares toward the east, where the sun rises and the old world remains. Every voyage beyond the horizon feels like a betrayal, a step into the hands of unseen forces. He does not speak, but his eyes are heavy. Fear is a companion to every man aboard, even if unacknowledged. Below deck, men sleep fitfully. Their dreams are filled with shifting shapes. Faces without names. Forests without trees. Laughter echoing underwater. Few will admit it, but each sailor knows the sea doesn't kill most of them. It is what awaits them on the other side. At first, the fears are small. A strange bird follows the ship, one that never alights. A fog at noon. A compass that wavers without reason. A sudden hush where gulls once cried. Thomas, the navigator, notices the compass's wobble but says nothing. Better to chalk it up to a dead reckoning miscalculation than let fear infect the crew. Midshipman Diego, 19 years old, confides in a friend. I heard tell of a curse, that if you see a green parrot before land, you'll never step on it. His friend laughs. But Diego's laugh is thin. He hears the stories of explorers who returned and found their wives changed, their children grown, or their fortunes swallowed by time. The journey drags on, weeks at sea. The sun burns, the decks rot, water sours. But still, they keep moving west, towards something dreaded more than storms. The first fearful sign comes at dusk. A hulking shape drifts under the surface. Not a whale, not a shark. Impossible to name. Something dark, just beneath. The crew stares, but they do not approach. They do not speak. Fear is not what is seen. It is what lingers after. That night, the sailors gather near the firebox. Teo the cook tells them the tale of La Bruja del Mar, the witch of the deep. She walks on silent tides, whispering promises of treasure or terror. You cannot see her face, but you always know when she is near. Some scoff, others cross themselves, because deep down, they know. Captain Anselmo holds private council with his officers. They have heard rumours, infectious fever, madness, war on shore. Not the sea, but man. Man who claims dominion over unknown lands. They talk in hushed tones, about tribes with stone edges, about rulers with eyes like vultures, about poisons no cure can fight. A sudden cry from the bow draws them all. Midshipman Diego points. A landmass, faint, distant, mist-shrouded, promise and threat in equal measure. The approach is silent. No smiles greet the first sight of land, no songs, only silent prayers and silent dread. For what confidence can one have when stepping onto unknown soil? When they land on a gentle beach, they break the hull's silence. Men march ashore. Their weapons are polished, faces chalk white. They name the place as they are told, Terra Assombrada, haunted land. For the rumour said this coast is cursed, that spirits of the lost linger, stealing minds from men. The first footstep grinds sand into the hull's wood. Thomas kneels to test the soil. It is soft, black, and warm. Too warm. Teo tastes the water, sweet, strange, no salt. He spits it out. What if the earth itself is not to be trusted? They build camp. A watch is posted at all hours. Men whisper stories of tribes with silver masks. Men who walk like crows, who have no names, no villages, and no mercy. They bring tokens, rosaries, small crosses, herbs, crystals. But what comfort do they offer, they do not know. But fear demands ritual. That night, The forest sings. Barely. A rustle. Or a footstep. Maybe. Nothing is nameless here. Every leaf could be a mask. Every shadow a face. Morning reveals footprints. Large. Human. In the sand. Near the edge of camp. They disappear into the forest. Silent. Waiting. Fear spreads. It grows not from what they've seen, but from what they haven't. What might be watching? What cannot be bargained with? Captain Anselmo makes a decision. They will explore inland, but only in groups, only at dawn, only with trust. Still, he knows. The greatest fear is not the ferocity of beasts. It is the agency of people, others, and the unknown history they carry. As they set out, the wind drops. The forest air is thick, heavy, suffocating. They walk past trees 6 feet around, entwined, vines thick as belts, leaves wet with dew and intent. This is not wilderness. This is containment. They find a path. No stone, no sign of camps, just deep tracks, unfinished, leading outward. Diego falters. He looks back, turns pale. He sees eyes in the trees. They blink. He takes a step back and hears whisper, in a language he doesn't know, but knows means caution. He glances at the captain. Anselmo nods. They follow. They carry swords, crossbows, beads. But how do you prepare to meet a people who are neither seen nor unseen? By midday, they reach a clearing. A statue greets them, ancient, stone-hewn. A figure with eyes too wide, hands raised. It is welcoming or warning. They cannot decide. Diego steps forward. He kneels. He bows his head. He prays, and the forest grows quiet. But a twig snaps. They jump. Scared. Turning. Nothing. Only the statue. But the air is still. They return to camp unused. The noise they expected never came. No drum. No shout. No arrow. Just the forest, watching. At night they discuss. Fear fractures. Some want to leave. Some want to press on. The captain says nothing. He thinks, better to fear what you cannot fight than to live in it without knowledge. And there lies the limbo. They found land, but their greatest foe may never raise a sword. It may wait and wait. The second morning was colder than expected. Not the air itself, but something in it. A hush, a chill, like something just out of sight was watching and waiting. The crew woke slowly, stretching sore backs, blinking at the canopy above them. Fog crawled through the underbrush like fingers. The scent of ash was faint in the air. Thomas, the navigator, was already awake. He hadn't slept. The statue they found yesterday haunted him, not because of its strangeness, but because it looked deliberate, familiar. Not familiar in memory, familiar in feeling, like something older than maps. Captain Anselmo gathered the men. They would split into 3 groups today, each to follow a different trail leading inland. Group A would trace the river that cut past the ridge. Group B would follow the footprints near the obsidian rocks. Group C, Anselmo, Thomas, Teo and Diego, would return to the clearing with the statue. I want to see if it moved, the captain said flatly. The men laughed nervously, but none doubted him. Group A returned by mid-afternoon. Nothing found but fallen trees and a bird carcass picked clean to the bone. Too clean. Not scavenger work. Something precise. Group B didn't return. Not by nightfall, not the next day. The forest changed on the 3rd morning. Paths they'd taken the day before had vanished. Trees they'd marked were unmarked. Diego insisted a boulder they passed twice had a carving on it before. Now it was blank. The jungle did not welcome them, nor did it openly threaten. It simply rearranged. At dusk, they heard a whistle. Faint. Clear. From the direction Group B had gone. 2 notes, low-high, again, low-high. Then silence. Thomas whispered, "That's not one of ours." Captain Anselmo nodded grimly. But he didn't say stop. They followed the whistle. past the river, through bramble, into dense shadow, and there, between trees, they found something else. Not men, not beasts, figures, cloaked, painted, silent, their faces masked with bark and bone, eyes dark and still. Dozens of them surrounding the path. They didn't speak, they didn't move, they simply stood, watching. Teo raised his cross, no reaction. Diego stepped forward, hands open, and said softly in Portuguese, "We mean no harm." One figure stepped out, slow, measured, tall, taller than a man should be. It reached into its cloak. The crew froze, but the figure only produced a piece of paper, folded, weather-worn, written in Latin. Thomas stepped forward and took it. The figure nodded, then disappeared into the forest. The others followed, silent as smoke. They read the letter by firelight. The ink had faded, but the script was unmistakable, Jesuit. Do not enter the stone valley. Do not walk beyond the face with no eyes. They do not speak, but they understand. This land was never meant for us. At the bottom, Father, Mateo Rios, 1499, dead for over 20 years. Fear returned, heavier now, more grounded. They knew the sea could drown them, but here the land remembered. It had a memory, a mood, a will, and they had trespassed. That night, something circled their camp. Boots crunched, cloth rustled, but no one was there, just shadows that held their shape too long. Thomas had a dream. He walked through fog, alone, holding his compass. It spun wildly, then slowed, pointing west, then east, then down, into the soil. He knelt and dug. His hands touched bone. Then the bone opened its mouth and whispered, "You drew the map. You brought them here. Now you stay." He woke, gasping. The sun was rising. But something had changed. The jungle was silent. Not quiet. Empty. Even the air felt thinner. They packed in silence. They didn't need to speak. They all knew they had been warned, and they had not listened. When they returned to the beach, the ship was gone. No sails, no mast, no sign of struggle. Just calm water and footprints. Hundreds of them coming from the sea. Into the jungle. Captain Anselmo knelt, not in prayer, in surrender. He did not speak for hours. Diego broke first. He ran into the trees, vanished. Thomas followed, but found only his cross, left hanging from a root. Teo said nothing. He was carving something into the mast of the last lifeboat. A name, not of a saint, but of his mother. They didn't speak of what to do next. There was no plan, only waiting, and the feeling that something ancient was circling, not with teeth, but with memory. That night, the wind returned. It whispered through the trees, not in a language they knew, but in rhythm, in judgment, in patience. They didn't light a fire. They sat in the dark and listened. Because some fears can't be outrun, only endured. It rained for 3 days, not heavily, a slow, steady drizzle that soaked skin and bone, never loud enough to be a storm, never gentle enough to feel like blessing. It blurred the line between sleep and waking, between man and mud, between memory and dream. Thomas stopped writing. His journal pages had melted into pulp, the ink running like blood from a wound. So he carved thoughts into the wooden side of the longboat, not words, symbols. Some he remembered from maps, some from the bark-mast figures, some he didn't remember learning at all. Captain Anselmo barely spoke. He stood at the shore from dawn until dusk, unmoving, as though waiting for a ship that no longer existed, even in memory. Sometimes he mumbled prayers, not in Latin, not in Portuguese, in a language no one knew. Teo began muttering in his sleep, naming things that weren't there. The red river, the second sun, the breathless hill. Diego hadn't returned. No one believed he would. On the 4th day, the rain stopped. and the forest answered, not with birdsong, with drums, distant, hollow, low, one beat, then silence, then two, then silence, then a pattern, slowly building, as if something beneath the earth had begun to wake. Thomas stood frozen, pulse matching the rhythm. The jungle did not threaten. It summoned, they followed it. Because what else was there? The lifeboat had cracked. Their rations rotted, their firewood mouldy, their charts useless. But the drums, they made sense, not in logic, in instinct, like a heartbeat guiding lost men home. They walked for hours. The sound led them, not forward, but inward, into a deeper part of the jungle, where the air thickened and time bent. At some point, they crossed a threshold. They felt it, like entering a cathedral built by silence and root. Here, the trees didn't sway. The insects didn't chirp. The world waited. Then they found it. The valley, wide and sunken, carved from volcanic stone, ringed with statues of headless men holding clay bowls. Moss covered their limbs like old wounds. In the centre, a structure, not a temple, not a ruin, a mouth, stone lips parting, a black tunnel disappearing into the hillside. No stairs, no doors, just descent. Thomas knew the choice was already made. The drum stopped the moment they arrived. The silence spoke louder than sound. This was what the explorers before them feared. Not death, return to a place not meant to be remembered. They entered. First Teo, then Captain Anselmo, then Thomas. The tunnel narrowed, stone to soil, light to dark, sound to breath. Inside, the walls pulsed faintly. Veins of crystal glowed, soft, red, and violet. Thomas touched one. Memories, not his, flashed behind his eyes. Men building with bare hands, women weeping on salt-crusted stone. A sun that never set. A voice saying, "You are not the first. You will not be the last." They reached a chamber, circular. In its centre stood a slab. Not an altar, a mirror. Stone polished to reflection, but not theirs. They looked in, and saw others. Explorers in different clothes, eyes hollow, staring back. Some old, some recent. One bore the insignia of father, Mateo Rios. Thomas gasped. The figures did not. They only mouthed one word. "Remember!" Captain Anselmo stepped forward. His hand brushed the mirror, and he froze, eyes wide. Then, peace. He exhaled deeply and whispered, "I see." His body crumbled. Not to ash, not to bone, to dirt, as if the land reclaimed him. Teo ran. He screamed, cried, fought at the tunnel walls, but they would not let him out. The forest had closed. The path was gone. Thomas stayed. He sat in front of the mirror and asked, "Why us?" No answer came. Only the pulse of the chamber. Only the eyes in the glass. Watching, waiting. Then the jungle spoke. Not in sound, but in feeling. Not anger, not hate, but memory. It remembered every step taken on its back. Every wound, every lie. Every flag planted in stolen soil. The explorers thought they came to claim. But the land was not passive. It was patient. Thomas stood. He placed his hand on the mirror. He did not dissolve. He remained. Because he had not come to conquer. He had come to learn. And to carry. He turned back toward the tunnel. Not to escape. To return. To warn. Not with maps. With truth. That there are places beyond ownership. Places that don't belong to us. Because they never did. Outside, the jungle was still. Teo was gone. Only Thomas remained. He walked back to the shore. The sea had returned, and with it, a ship. Unmanned, empty, waiting. He boarded. He did not question. The sails filled with wind that hadn't blown in weeks. And he sailed east, back toward home. The ship sailed itself. No crew, no lanterns lit, no music on the wind. Just canvas and current and the long stretch of return. Thomas did not sleep. He watched the stars, and they watched back. Because he no longer sailed under the sky he left behind. He knew this in his bones. Something had changed. He had brought something with him. The voyage home passed like a dream. Not a single storm, not a single whale, not even the cries of gulls. Only silence, and time stretched thin. His hair grew longer, his face aged, his eyes hollowed, not from fear, from knowing. When land appeared, it was dull and grey, not like the jungle's breath or the cursed horizon. Just Lisbon, just stone and salt and crowds. But when Thomas stepped off the boat, he felt it. The earth recoiled, slightly, subtly, as if the world itself knew what he carried. He returned alone. The crown demanded answers. They received none. The mission was a failure, they said. The lands, uncharted, unclaimed, unfit. No gold, no spices, no return on investment, no threat, no reward. The ship was sold for timber, the logs split and repurposed. Some say they creaked strangely when nailed, some say no nails ever held right. Thomas retired to the hills. A cottage, a garden, no maps, no journals, no charts. He wrote nothing, he drew nothing, but at night villagers saw him standing in the field, looking at stars that weren't there. One spring he disappeared, left no door open, no candle burned, only the faint smell of wet soil, and strange markings carved into the oak by his bed. They looked like eyes. Years passed, others sailed west, some never returned. Those who did came back quiet, some with burns in the shape of symbols, some with languages they didn't know. All of them feared the sea less than the silence that followed. The church tried to burn his notes, but found nothing to burn, just blank pages. That reappeared in other books. Marginalia, scribbles, drawings, eyes, roots, statues. A bishop once found a folded letter in a chapel pew. The ink was old, the message short. They remember, even if we don't. Some lands are not lost, they are simply waiting. No signature, but the wax seal bore a compass cracked in half. And so, the truth was buried. Not under conspiracy, under disbelief. For what man wants to believe the greatest threat is not war or storm, but memory? That a land could know you, that it could wait for you to return, that it could become part of you, and that when you bring it home, it never fully leaves. Centuries later, explorers still fear the sea, but the sea is honest. It kills with teeth and salt, not silence, not mirrors, not memories. What explorers feared most was what waited to be remembered, what could not be mapped, could not be claimed, and could not be forgotten, even when every sailor was gone, even when the logs turned to dust, even when the names were erased. It remains, just beyond the edge of every map, waiting.